Hi, everyone. As part of the Wayfinder series, I'm excited to introduce all of you to Christine Longnecker, who I found out about through the New York Times. They did a story about her and her amazing dog, which I want you guys to hear about. I also had a reading with her because she's an animal communicator. And in these troubling times, oh, there's a puppy. Which one is that?
That's Millie. That's my newest addition. This was foster number 33 in my first foster fail.
Oh, first foster fail. Well, good for her. She must be special. And where's the
Yeah,
other?
Miles is
Oh,
here too. He was just
Miles.
snuggling under a blanket.
Oh my God, I cannot wait everyone to hear the story about Miles. So I'm going to hand it over to you and start with how you met this incredible dog, why you ended up in the New York Times, and why now your dog now has a Hollywood agent, which I think is so hysterical. So let's start from the beginning.
Yeah. So the story kind of begins. My whole life I've been an animal lover. I've had, dogs growing up, and I've had cats, and I train horses, and I've ridden horses my whole life. And in 2018, I kind of decided that it was time for me to get my own dog, my first dog as an adult. And so I started down the path of putting in applications to the rescues and going and looking at dogs because I just, I'm a big proponent of rescues. And I was at this one rescue, and I was walking down the line of kennels because one of the dogs that I wanted to look at was at the far end. And kind of as I was walking by, something made me stop, and I kind of backpedaled, and I looked, and this little black and tan dog was sitting at the front of the kennel and just staring at me. And I looked into his eyes, and I heard clear as day, the first time anything has ever communicated with me, I just want to be a good boy. And my heart just shattered into a million pieces because I could feel the visceral sadness and angst and panic and scared and everything that he was feeling. And I immediately was like that dog, that's the one I want. And the shelter was like, I don't know if you want that one. They didn't really they didn't say anything to me, but I could tell that they were like, I don't know that that's a good one, because I was like, oh, he's gonna come to the barns with me, and he's gonna be with me while I teach lessons. And they were like, oh God. And so I took him. And I come to find out that they had pretty much labeled him as completely unadoptable. He'd been brought back multiple times. They considered him that he couldn't be around other dogs, kids, cats, children, your husband, you couldn't be off leash, couldn't function, was just they had completely written him off. And I mean, I brought him home, and he hasn't been bad a day since. He's so wonderful. And I think he honestly just needed someone who was going to understand him and give him a job. And so he started coming to the barns with me. And, when I first got him, he was petrified. He had horrible undiagnosed colitis. He had worms. He was scared of his own shadow. His leg wouldn't, or his tail wouldn't come out from between his legs. And slowly, as I took him to the barns, and I gave him a space, and I told him he was loved, his tail started to come out, and he started to move around and get a little more animated. And one day I was teaching a jumping lesson, and one of the horses hit the jump. And when they hit the jump, it makes a noise. And he just started barking and took off running and jumped the jump after the horse and was like, see, this is how you do it. And I was like, oh, is there something to this? And so I had friends who had done dog agility before. And I was like, oh, that would be interesting. Maybe we'll try to do some dog agility. So I got him enrolled in some classes, and he took to it like a pig to mud. He absolutely loves it. And I always have that. It's always been my fun thing, right? I over the years, and kind of reconciling using animals for sport and having animals as our partners for sports and wanting them to be happy too, right? I've really come to believe I want to compete, but I want to be with a partner who wants to compete. I don't want it forced, right? So for me and Miles, I wouldn't do agility if he didn't want to do it. And he just, he loves it, and he ate it up, and he just kept titling and getting all of these awards. And he qualified for the national competition 3 years in a row. And both years that we went, the one year we didn't, but both years that we went, he was the #1 All-American dog in his height class. And then we ended up getting into Westminster.
Oh,
Um,
wow. For
and
agility?
for agility, yeah, this little, I mean, I think he should win all of the confirmation classes, but they frown upon, those non-purebreds in the in the confirmation classes. So he could go to the agility in Westminster. And when you sign up for any competition like that, you put a bio together of like your history, right? And I always put in his bio that he was this unadoptable shelter mutt that now has 2 going on 3 master agility championships, has been number 1 dog at nationals, whatever. And something must have caught the eye of the writer at the New York Times. And she sent me this email. And what I always think is hysterical is I'm like scrolling through my email and I see this message and I'm like, well, that's spam. Like that's the New York Times, haha. And I almost deleted it. And I decided I should like Google her name before I deleted it. And thank God I did, because it turns out like she's been with the Times forever. She's completely legit. And she came and did this absolutely beautiful piece on him and ended up, so like the parallel story to the Miles story is that as I've been with him, I've been fostering this ability to communicate with the animals because he was the first one who really came through. And as I kind of grew and flexed that muscle, I started to be able to communicate with all kinds of animals. But it was like my best kept secret because, right, everyone thinks that's weird and you're a weirdo, and I wanted to be normal. Jokes on me, I've never been normal, but and so when COVID hit, I was like, I'm a small business owner. I couldn't work. And I was like, well, gosh, I got to make money somehow. And like, all right, I guess I don't care if people think I'm crazy, right? I can sit on my couch and communicate with animals. So I started marketing it, and it's completely blown up. It's been such an amazing journey.
Wow. So people, you have a website. Can you tell everyone what your website is?
Yeah, it's just Christine Longnecker, my name, christinelongnecker.com. And you can go to the communications section of it, and there's a whole schedule, and you can schedule through there.
Okay. And how long do people have to wait now? Because I know I had to wait quite a while to get in.
Yeah, I think I'm scheduling into November, and I'm actually I'm taking a little bit of time off over the holidays. So I need to make a post on my social media. My social media page is Longnecker Communications. That like if you want in before the end of the year, you probably need to get on it and start thinking about it now because it's filling up quickly.
Isn't that incredible? Well, you are naturally good at it. And as I said, I had a reading with you, and I just wanted to share your abilities with people because it really helps to know what your dog or cat is thinking, especially if there are some sort of behavioral issues. So when that first happened to you, you literally had some sort of spiritual aha moment when he said that to you, right? Like it went all through your body. You can't explain these things. I've had that happen to me with the wild horses that I work with out in Utah, and I told you a little bit about that. But when you have this thing happen, it's hard to explain to anybody, but it feels so real and so true that you almost feel like, if I can do this, then I must dedicate my life to helping other people. And that's sort of what happened to you too. You now know that you can calm people down, because a lot of people who are probably contacting you are having issues with their dog, or they've lost their dog or cat, right?
Or their horse or their snake or their rabbit or their fish. It's so incredible, and like you said, you can't express it because I always want, and in the middle of communications a lot of times I'm like, gosh, I really wish I could take this out of my brain and my body and put it into yours, because trying to articulate it just doesn't do it the justice that you can feel, because they talk to me like I get words and phrases, I see images, I'll feel things in my body, and then it's kind of taking all of that and interpreting it and then giving it in a coherent English sentence. And that's so difficult. And I think that's what separates. I think there's so many people that are capable of doing the things that we do, but they don't know how to take that information and interpret it and give it back. And they're not, it's like going to the gym, right? Like I can lift 5 pounds the first day, but by the next year I can lift 30. And so if you're not working that muscle, you're not getting any better. And so you're always frustrated because you're like, I want to be able to do it, but I can't. And so it's about trusting your intuition and trusting your gut and kind of following through and making it happen.
That is such a well put description of what it's like. Because even with doing astrology readings, the way that I've gotten better and highly accurate is just because I do it so much and I've developed the muscle. And a lot of it's intuition. A lot of my advanced students say, well, why did you say that? I don't get it. I said, some of it's just a gut feeling, intuition. I've learned to trust it. It's almost as if the chart of the person I'm reading, they're communicating with me the same way that a dog or a cat can communicate. But has Miles, by the way, why did you name him Miles?
You know, that's funny. A lot of it had to do with like just going through a lot of names that seemed like they would stick.
Oh, don't
Um,
you think dogs pick their own name? If you let them try out, if you try out different names, they'll pick the name they want,
so
right?
so there's some animals care, some animals don't. It's interesting because I get that
Oh,
question a lot. And
okay.
some like I had this horse this one time, it was hysterical. He was such a jerk. And the owner reached out to me of like, why is this horse such a jerk? And he was like, because you renamed me and I hate it. But
Wow.
for the most part, you know, when I ask them, they're like, names are a very human thing. So it doesn't matter to them. In Miles's case, like at that point, it was, you know, I was so hit or miss with my communication. It was finding a name that could really stick. And you know, I came up with Miles, and I remember the day I decided Miles, and my mom was like, oh, you know, it's because he had to travel so many miles to find you. And I was like, oh my God, like you're right, right? It was that intuition thing again happening that I never even put two and two together until my mom was like, yeah, duh, that makes sense.
How old is he now?
He's 7.5 now.
And how many years have you had him?
6.5. I got him when he was around like 1.
Around one. Do you know anything about his background? Where did they find him?
So no, but I've asked him.
Oh yeah, of course.
Yeah.
What did he
um,
say?
it's interesting because I didn't ask him for a really long time. I could tell that there was an insane amount of trauma there that it was not worth touching. I did not want to bring up. And same with a lot of animals don't mind talking about it. But some that's off limits. So I've never really asked him. All I knew is that he was brought in as a stray. He was in a high kill shelter in Kentucky, and the organization in Erie pulls dogs from that high kill shelter. So he was found wandering in Kentucky, pulled to the shelter, and then brought to Erie. Um, and one night, it was funny actually. I think he did it to save his sister over here because we were getting ready for bed and she had been a little bit naughty. She's perfect in every way, but she was like thinking about being a little naughty. And so I was trying to do this communication to be like, what do you need? Like, why are you trying to chew the remote? Right? Like, we don't need to do that. And she was kind of like, oh God, I don't want to talk about it. And he hopped in and was like, hey, I'm ready to talk about my past. And so like, it's interesting because I'm pretty
That's so
sure he was saving
cool.
his sister. But he's, you know, he gave me this just absolute heart-wrenching story about how he was the mouthy puppy of a litter, and the kids would kind of push him away and get mad at him because they didn't understand that he was just mouthy, and he ended up in a home that didn't appreciate him and was really mean to him, and he ended up getting out and nobody ever came and looked for him, and he spent time on the streets having to just claw and fight for anything. And his, like I said, he had horrible colitis when I got him, and so he'd been struggling his whole life with stomach issues on top of nobody ever really understanding him or giving him a chance. And so by the time he got captured by, you know, the animal control, he had a horrible experience with people, and he felt horrible, and he got taken and put in a kennel and labeled as bad and unadoptable, and nobody was understanding all of the trauma that he's been through.
Also, he's highly intelligent. It's almost more painful to be a highly intelligent dog. Really? I mean, he's obviously really intelligent, or he
Oh
couldn't do
gosh,
the
yes.
agility stuff. Yeah. And if he wasn't so highly intelligent, he wouldn't have been able to stop you dead in your tracks and communicate with you on the spot. That's a very high vibration animal.
Oh my gosh, yes. And he's been the catalyst for all of this. So it's like he had to go through all of that to be able to get to me to do what we're doing now. And it's just like, I know like that past was so painful. And you'll be able to read about that past a little bit when his children's book comes out.
Okay, so tell everyone about, so because of the New York Times article, you now have a full client load up until November, and you now have a children's book under contract with a major publisher?
Yeah, no publishing company yet.
Okay,
But we have the author signed.
okay.
So he got, after like the New York Times blew up, if I had $1 for everyone who stopped us at Westminster to ask for a photo with my dog, like I could retire. It was so insane and it was so surreal. And he got interviewed by ABC National News, CBS, Inside Edition, and NPR, Canada Radio, like everywhere and anywhere picked up his story because it's such a feel good story, right? And I never in my life have I ever cared about being famous, right? Like that's just so not important to me. But what is important to me is the fact that people now know just how amazing this dog is, and the fact that he can maybe save one or two other animals is just so, that's what matters to me. um and so while like we're in this like Westminster craziness, I get this message from a Hollywood agent and producer who was like, I have a rescue cattle dog. I absolutely love your story. Please call me. There's a movie here. And so
Wow,
I've
a
been in
movie,
contact with,
wow.
yeah. So like, and that's like, that's far off. It takes a long time. And
Yeah,
God only knows, right? Like 2% of ideas become movies. So
right.
will it happen? I certainly hope so. Um, but that's farther in the future. So I have the Hollywood agent, and then I had gotten some emails and some messages from some literary agents. And I ended up pairing with one who I absolutely loved. And she and I had some really good conversations. We've signed a children's author, and now we have to kind of shop around for a publishing company. And the author's already written just a little bit of like a teaser of the story so that we can sell it to the publishing companies. And I was just sobbing. I was sobbing. I've talked to him on the phone a couple times. He has a rescue dog himself. He's read all of Miles's stories. We've been on Zooms together where Miles has like put his face on the camera, and he gets him, and
Oh, that's
it's
so
so beautiful. And it's
incredible.
just so wild that like my life has become this.
Because you listen to your intuition. And a lot of people, when you were walking down those kennels, some people would have overridden what you were feeling by thinking, oh, I'm crazy. Why would I want this dog? Or when you went to go take him, they were trying to tell you not to take him. I mean, there were many points along the way where you could have said, this is crazy. Why am I doing this? But that's what I love about your story is the importance of when you get hit with that kind of intuitive thing, even though everyone in the world's telling you it doesn't make any sense, it doesn't matter. It's 100% right. And when you do listen, it's like nothing but good comes out of it, because those moments are actually super rare to have happen for any of us. Don't you
And I
agree?
think I think that's the takeaway, right? And that's so hard because I'm a type A, I'm a perfectionist. I like everything. I hate change, I hate chaos, I hate all of that, right? But every time my intuition, my gut tells me something, it's always like out of left field, but it's always right. And it's that ability because like you said, it's so easy to be like, oh no, don't listen to that. That's crazy. Like, don't like use your rational brain, which I mean, I agree. Like your rational brain's important to an extent, but on stuff like that, it's just I'm learning as the years go on to just give in and trust my gut because my gut is always right. And when you follow your heart, just the most beautiful things happen.
Right. Not only that, I always tell, again, most of the people who are listening to this are followers of me as an astrologer. But I don't know if you know, I also have written and illustrated 20 children's picture books.
I saw that,
I
yeah.
know, so crazy. So, but my big love is animals, just like you. And I'm always telling my students and my clients that really having the right intention is so important when you're doing this kind of work. If you had gone looking to make him famous, it would never have worked. It doesn't work that way because it's actually a spiritual journey you're on with him, in that this is about making a difference. And I always say that when I'm doing work with my clients, like I'm in service to something bigger than me. And if it's ever about me, I literally think my gift for reading charts would go away. I mean, I'm very aware of my role here, and it's not really about me. Unfortunately, I can't, whenever I try to make stuff happen, it doesn't really work out very well for me.
Right. Yeah. Same.
You understand, like, but then this whole thing. So you have a Hollywood agent, you have a literary agent, and you've got now this amazing new career and this incredible dog. I mean, what is he thinking right now about this interview? He sort of put his head down.
He's napping.
He's napping.
He says he just had lunch and it's his afternoon snooze.
You know what kind of dog he is?
So I did an embark test. It's funny because when I adopted him, I was really under the assumption that he was like a Doberman Hound mix. And you know, I don't know how accurate the DNA results stuff is. They say they're super accurate, whatever. So I did it because everyone always asks me, and he has no Dobie in him. They say he's 40% cattle dog, 23% lab, 10% border collie, and then the rest is hound.
Wow, I would have guessed hound was number one.
Yeah, he's very houndy, and he's got the hound bawoof. He bawoos really well.
Okay.
Yeah, you bawoo.
Yeah, that's how
Yeah.
he talks. He loves you so much.
Oh my God, he's the best thing that's ever happened to me. That's for sure. I mean, you too, Millie, but
Yeah, you gotta be careful. I wanted to tell you a story about a dog that I rescued once, but about the names, because I think names are so interesting, and I do think that dogs, if you allow them, they will pick you.
Oh, 1,000%. I don't choose any animal I've ever sought out has been not a dud, but
I know
had the same connection as
I know.
everybody's found me. So I just let them find me.
Right, exactly. And it doesn't mean you can't, you're not supposed to sit home and wait for them to walk down the street. Sometimes you have to go to the shelters or whatever to find them. But one story I have to tell you about this dog that I had, I got an email because I was involved, I was on the board of the Humane Society in Vero Beach. And one of the women there sent me an email about this 7-year-old dog that was getting beaten up by her other dogs in the house. And this dog was during Hurricane Katrina. She was rescued, and they named her Katrina, which is a horrible name to name a dog after a hurricane that she was left stranded in.
Right.
And this was the description about this dog. She's got a lot of issues. She doesn't respond to her name. She was going through all this stuff. And I was like, oh, it sounds like a great dog.
Yeah, I can't wait. Bring her up.
Yeah. So she wouldn't give up. This woman had met the dog, and she had this gut feeling that this dog was for me. So I said, all right, I trust you. I said, I really don't want 3 dogs, but I'll meet her. We met at the Humane Society in this big field. She runs over to me, runs into my lap, and falls on her back. And I look at her and I say, I guess we're done. I guess this is it. So I bring her home, and I'm like, Katrina, I know why you're not answering to that name, because you hate that name. So I tried out a bunch of different names, and then I finally landed on the right one. And I said, Pumpkin. And she was like, yeah. And she always answered to her name. If I called her from way down the beach, she would come. And the woman who had her before, when I told her, you know, Pumpkin answers to her name all the time, she was in shock. She said, I couldn't believe it. So there is something about some dogs do really care what their name is, like that horse.
Absolutely.
But some dogs that are not that complicated, they probably don't care.
Right. Or the ones that are like, oh, I'm just happy to be home, right? Like, call me whatever you want. Just make sure you feed me.
Yeah, right.
But the ones who, any animal, I think we owe it to them to give them the sentience to be able to choose their own name. And I think part of that is I always struggle with naming my animals because I want it to be right. And so now it's so much easier because I can feel into it or ask them, or like, you know, it comes so much easier. But it used to be that I was like, oh my gosh, how do I pick a name? Right. And now it's like, oh yeah, what name do you want? Or like, here's 3, try them on.
Yeah, exactly. So one of the things that's interesting about rescues is that you often don't know when their birthday is. But if I do ever know the birth date of a dog, it's always so cool for me to do their astrology chart. And a lot of people don't realize you can actually do a chart for a dog.
So I have thought that a million times because yeah, I don't know either of these guys' actual birthday, but that would be absolutely bananas. Like I would love to do that. And I have the day that I've decided is their birthday, but you know.
You don't know. And I don't know as an animal, because we both can communicate with animals. I don't know that I would ever get the exact date of an animal's birth. That's
Well, they
that's
don't
like,
do time the way we do.
I know it's like it's not going to
Yeah.
work. It doesn't work that way. And I don't even understand how it all works. But one time, this was a pretty funny story. I was a friend of mine in Colorado. He had just lost his dog, and I said, "Well, let me see if I can communicate with him." And he was talking to him in an Australian accent. The dog wasn't Australian. He was a Labradoodle. But he was like talking about throwing shrimp on the Barbie. And I was like, okay, I don't know why he's talking with an Australian accent. And then he said, you don't have to make your home a castle with a moat, but it would be nice if you took a little bit better care of your home and your property. And I was like, oh my God, this dog, that's exactly what a dog would have said to him. So anyway, the dog said he wanted him to go to the local humane society because there was a dog there by the name of Morocco, and he wanted him to adopt Morocco. So I said to my friend, I said, that's a really weird name for a dog. I said, I don't even know what your closest animal shelter is. So he went online, and guess what? There was a dog there named Morocco.
I love that validation.
But it gets weirder. I didn't finish that. So then he drove there and didn't get out of the car and didn't go inside. I was so upset. I was like, oh my God, the odds of there being a dog named Morocco at your shelter. So how's this for weird? Then 2 days later, I had a client. She was from that same Colorado area. And I was still reeling over the fact that he didn't go get this dog. And I was kind of upset about it because I had checked the dog out online. It looked like a nice dog. And believe it or not, she worked at that shelter and knew that dog.
Jeez.
All within 2 days. So when people say animals can't communicate, I mean, I don't know exactly where they go when they die, but I know they're not dead because they're still able to communicate, right? How do you feel about that?
Oh, yeah, I talk to animals who have passed all the time, and they, they have a majority of them have a wisdom about life when they're alive that we don't have, and they're even wiser when they've passed. And to me, I have always said my whole life, if there's a heaven without animals, I don't want to go. But there isn't a heaven without animals because they go right there. Like they're right there with us, whatever your version of heaven or the afterlife or whatever it is. There's no like death is not the end. It's just a new beginning. And it's the same for the animals.
Exactly. So we will see them all again, and that will be super fun, right?
Or they'll come back to you in this life too.
Oh, that's happened to me.
Yeah, I mean that opens a huge can of worms. But like I have a cat right now who, when I was 5, I got my first cat. And I named her Boots. And she reincarnated into my cat Giselle now. Like she's part of my soul group that I have all of the time. And so many animals.
I'm just gonna laugh. Look at your dog.
Oh, I know. Oh, she's ridiculous.
I love the legs.
Put this down here.
Oh my God. That's
She's
so
always like, she's always upside down and backwards. Like it's a shame she's not comfortable here.
Oh no. But anyway, so Giselle,
yeah, she's my cat now, and she keeps reincarnating into this life with me, and I'll talk to animals who have passed away or who are close to passing away, or some who are still young and they're like, I'm coming back to you. Like they already know. And that's so cool. And sometimes they're like, they know what they're coming back as, and maybe they're like, I'm gonna come back as a dog instead of a cat this time, or I'm going to come back as a horse. Or it's so interesting how much more they understand about that stuff than we do, simply because we always are trying to put science behind it, which I would love. Like I would love someone to put me in an MRI machine and study me doing communications and figure out what the heck is going on, because I know it works and I know there's something. So like study me. But the animals don't care about that. They just know. And so they can say it, and it's wild because it always happens.
Right. So I got to tell you something that's really flipping me out about Miles. So the way he looks, when I was about 8 or 9 years old, I wanted a dog so badly. I was obsessed with dogs. My parents wouldn't let us get a dog. We finally got one later, but around 8 or 9, we didn't have one. And I one day was walking around the neighborhood, and this dog who looks just like Miles followed me home. And he was my absolute best friend. I have never in my life, even to this day, had a dog that was perfectly calm and adored me and would go anywhere with me without a leash. And my parents wouldn't let me keep it because they said my sister was allergic. And of all the things in my life, the one regret I have is that I didn't fight harder to keep that dog, because that was my dog. The one, and I named him Boy. And so when I look at your dog, I'm like, that looks just like Boy. And I'm wondering if I have some weird connection with you and your dog.
It would be interesting if that, like, how did this, is that how this all came full circle? Like, Miles is the catalyst for everything in my life. So is he the reason that you were able to be drawn to the article, to then reach out to me to communicate with your animals, and now here we are, right? Like, it wouldn't.
No, because when I look at his face, I want to cry, because I have very few regrets in my life, but losing that, they ended up giving the dog to one of their friends, and they renamed him Duke. And I always remember, I was sick to my stomach because I knew this was my soul dog. So anyway, I think I have a connection with you and Miles, and I'm really happy that we know each other, because I know I hopefully will be sending you people, and it's going to bring a lot of peace to people. I mean, when you lose an animal, not to be able to communicate with them can be very painful. And as soon as you make that connection, the grief can lessen a bit,
Oh, absolutely. And it's always the same message of, I'm on the other side and I'm fine. And, the pain wasn't as bad as you thought it was. And I'm like, everything's fine. But to be able to hear that and to get the specifics too, right? It's like, I could tell you that everything's fine, but the fact that I'm able to tell you what their favorite game with you was, or what their favorite thing to do with you was, things I would never be able to know, just gives this calming to people of like, you are connected, you are talking to them, and you are giving me the closure that I need so that I can move on, which is
right.
it's so beautiful. And I'm so blessed to be that channel, because I call myself, I'm like the mediator or the translator, right? Like, I'm in the middle and you guys are talking, I'm just making that so you can understand the language.
Exactly. It's sometimes the way I describe it, it's like trying to talk through cotton candy. Like you kind of hear it and feel it and sense it, but you'll get a word and you're not sure if it's spelt exactly that way, but you'll get around it, and then the person will help refine it. But it's definitely you have to be very patient with the translation process sometimes, right?
And you have to not get frustrated, right? That was, I think, the hardest thing for me when I was starting, is I wanted it and I wanted it now, because that's the way I want everything in life. And I couldn't. And so then I would get frustrated, and then I would get stuck in my own head, as opposed to just being like, okay, just like take that word and kind of run with it and see where it gets you. And now it comes through so much clearer. But I can tell on the days where, like, I'm a little more tired, or I've done, 10 communications in a row, and I'm like, oh gosh, like, this should be easy for me, but like, I'm tired now. So wait, you got to spell it out to me better, because I don't know what you're saying.
Yeah, people don't realize this work. It takes a very unusual, it's a type of energy that it takes that's sort of hard to describe. There's sometimes after just one astrology session, and I'm just beat for the whole day. And I think it's because we're using a different part of our brain that it just operates at a different frequency, and we've both developed it, which is great. And I don't think many people, I think the only way to really develop it is to have a lot of connection with nature, or not to be corrupted by, like, you've never really worked in the corporate world, right? Have you?
I was there for like a hot second, and I was like, I can't, I'm gonna go crazy.
Right. Same with me. I knew I had to preserve something inside of me. And, you pay a price for that, because you don't go on a normal route. But as long as you're doing what's good and true to you, and you have a gift, then you're always protected. And I think Miles is absolutely stunning, of course, because he looks like boy to me. So funny. Got a question for you. I forgot to ask you this the other day when we did the reading,
Yeah.
but um, have you ever, how do you explain dogs that have a prejudice against a color? So my dog Luna does not like any black dogs, and it's so embarrassing. I mean, everyone says she's a racist. It's so embarrassing for me. Like, what do you think, that's just because a black dog must have hurt her in her past?
So I think it's really dependent. And I actually, so Miles has that same problem. He cannot function around shepherds. Um,
Any kind of
any
German
shepherd,
Shepherd? Any
any
Shepherd.
shepherd. He's had a couple like shepherd mix friends, but even for the most part, anything that's more shepherd than anything else, he cannot handle himself because he had a very bad experience with a shepherd like within the first couple months that I got him.
Oh, you were there when it happened.
Yeah, yes. And I have a cadaver nerve in my hand from it.
Whoa, what is
Yeah,
that? I don't even know what that is. Oh, a
it's
cadaver nerve
yeah,
means,
yeah, yeah. I have they like
oh,
the dogs got into it, and I of course like my little sad 30-pound dog. I was trying to like yank up, and I got in the crossfire, and they ripped a nerve out of my hand. So it was kind of traumatic. Like I'm over it, right? Like I have it is what it is. But he cannot let that go with shepherds. So to him, like, everyone's like, oh my God, Miles can't be like, well, it's not his fault. Like he had a horrible experience and he doesn't want to back down from that. And so in Luna's case, yeah, did she have a bad experience with a black dog
I don't
or
know. I'm her third owner, and I don't know what happened to her. Never with me, no.
there's also the idea that black dogs tend to the darker dogs tend to not show expression as well just because of how dark they are, and so
Right.
she might not be able to read them as well, and so she
Oh,
doesn't.
that's fascinating.
Mhm.
I never thought of that before.
Yeah, their features are darker, so their expression's not as clear as other dogs.
Wow. What do you do if you ever see well, this is a horrible thing, but when you see a really, really smart, great dog and you know the people who have it are not doing what they need to do, are you able to try to help recalibrate the situation? Because that breaks my heart when I see that.
So it depends on the context. What I run into a lot that I can't help with and kills me is like when I take my clients to horse shows and there's horses that literally trot by me and stare me in the face and say, help me. Right. And I'm like, oh, I don't, and I just offer them my love and I tell them that I'm sorry on behalf of humans. And if they try really hard to communicate with their owners or the trainer, that maybe something will get through and they'll be able to fix it. And sometimes it's as simple as like the rider's just super green and pulling on their mouth and they just need to be able to give a little more in another couple of months, like it'll be fine. But that kills me because what am I going to do? Like walk up to the owner and be like, excuse me, your horse has stopped pulling on its face, right? No.
I'm so
But when
glad you said that, because that crazy woman on TV, the not medical medium, the Hollywood or Long Island medium, she goes up to total strangers all the time. And I just think I would never do that to somebody.
that's not, I don't know. I haven't been in this long enough. I don't know. You've been in it way longer than I have, but like in my mind, like that's just not my place. My place is if the animal reaches out to me to absolutely offer them love and support. And if I saw something absolutely horrible happening, I would of course step in. But if it's as simple as like your rider needs to ride better, well, like I'm going to tell you that that's hopefully coming because they're working with a trainer and that's going to happen. I couldn't imagine just like butting in where I wasn't asked. But if it's in a communication, that is a struggle, right? Because you have this smart, high energy animal with like
Right.
a sedentary person. And I try really hard to nudge in the right direction, be like, instead of being like, this dog's super smart and you're not using their abilities. I'm like, well, what about like puzzle games? Or have you thought about dog sports? And when they're like, no, I don't have time, I don't care. I'm like, okay, well, like puzzle games are easy, or play hide and go find the treats in the house every couple days. Like I try to make something really simple that it feels like they're able to do so that then when they do it and they see this really big change in their dog or their cat or their horse or their whatever it is, that sparks something in them, and then they'll normally come back for like a check-in or something, and then we can kind of like push the envelope a little bit, right? Because then if I give them something too big that they're not going to go do, they're going to be like, oh, that crazy lady, right? But if I give them something small that's going to help the animal know that I'm trying and the owner is going to see a difference, then I feel like we've created this connection, we've created this conversation, so that then they'll be more willing to do more in the future.
Right. The other thing I always tell people, and no one ever seems to tell anyone this, but dogs need to smell new things and see, their brains and their minds need to do more than stay in your backyard. Like a lot of people think, well, they're just out in the backyard all day, they're fine. And I personally don't think that that's the best. I think they want to explore and see new things and go to different places. And don't you agree with me or not?
That's what they do. And the ones who, and I have talked to some who are very much like, I love my house, I don't want to go outside, but the reason they are is because they've had intense trauma outside of the home. And
that would make sense. Yeah.
That's their safe space, and it's become their safe space. But any normal dog wants to explore, wants to use their nose, because and you know, they say that dogs' smell is so incredible and they can smell so much until you like, right, because the animals will give me what they're smelling or what they're feeling. Until you've had that sensation, it's mind-blowing. It is mind-blowing what they can smell and understand and get out of just a piece of grass. And so to then tell them, like when you take them for a walk, that they're not allowed to sniff things, or that they need to keep moving, or that, you know, you take the same path every day, that's just so sad. To be like us eating the same food every day or doing the same thing all day every day. Like it's not fair.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. Someone told me once that, and I don't know if this is true, I want to ask you. Someone said if your dog blinks at you fast, that they're trying to tell you they love you. Have you ever heard that before?
So cats do the slow blinkies.
What does
Like,
that mean?
so when cats communicate with like you or other cats, they'll blink slow and like keep their eyes closed and open really slow. And I call it the slow blinkies. And that's an I love you. That means they like feel content and safe.
Okay. Almost like they're
Dogs,
falling asleep.
yeah. And dogs actually is the same. The fast blinking to me is more of a stress reaction. I mean, I'm not a dog trainer, right? So
I just was curious if you knew. Yeah.
But to me, the slower, the better, because
Okay.
faster is more, you're more increasing the nervous system.
Oh, that makes total sense. I'll have to check the speed next time I see
Gotta
it.
Google it.
And also one other thing, I keep thinking of all these dog questions, just curious if you know, it's very rare to see dogs that smile when they greet you. They go like, you know, they lift their little teeth up, you know, I mean, their lip up. What do you make about that? They're literally copying a human smile, aren't they? And it's not many dogs. I've only met like 3 or 4 dogs in my whole life that have ever done this.
I actually just got done watching this Netflix documentary called Word of Dog.
Okay.
And it was super interesting because it talked about how dogs have changed their behaviors to mimic us so that they can communicate with us better. And I do think like they even talk about how animals will give off pheromones like they're our human child, right? Which makes total sense to me because I will die for these animals. Like
Right.
they are my children.
Right.
No one can tell me differently.
Right.
But so it makes sense then that they've copied us, and they'll even like they'll do things that are totally not dog like because they've seen me do it. Or like right now we foster for a rescue organization, and we have this foster right now who's absolutely wonderful. Go to happybark.org, look up Kara, you want her.
How big is she? Because I got a few friends who are looking for dogs right now.
She's like 60, 65. She's a little bit bigger than Miles. She's like a Rottie Hound mix, and she's had a hell of a life leading up to us, but all she wants, it's just like Miles, all she wants is to be a good girl. And so she's done nothing over the last 6 weeks but study each of our dogs. And so like I have my two and then my roommate has hers, and they couldn't be more different.
Mhm.
And poor Kara like walks around and is studying them and then copies them. So like she'll make all these funny noises when she plays because Millie sounds like a little pterodactyl when she plays. But then she'll cock her head the way Miles does when I'm talking to him because she's watched me talk to him. Or she'll like beg for dinner the way my roommate's dog does. Like, so they're watching each other and they're watching us and they're studying how to better live with us and communicate, which is amazing. It's kind of like when you go to a foreign country and everybody knows English, right? Like they're like, oh, I have to figure out how to communicate with these crazy Americans. So meanwhile, I'm like, I'm really sorry. I wish I could speak your language. I speak dog, but I don't speak German.
Yeah, so that's a great story because it's true. They do learn from each other. There is no doubt that a dog, like a really smart dog that has good manners, can totally train a rambunctious younger dog that doesn't know manners yet. Because a lot of it's just about learning how to be respectful.
Yeah, and that's part of like Millie. Miles she thankfully adores Miles and like worships the ground he walks on, and he's trained the good and the bad for what to do. And even like, so she's doing agility now too, but she was really afraid of the teeter. She didn't like that the teeter came down and banged. And Miles was actually really afraid of the teeter when I first taught it too. Like that's pretty normal. But after like a couple of weeks of me trying to get her on the teeter and make her not worried, I was like, this is stupid. And so I put her and had her watch Miles do it and have Miles run up and run up and run up. And she was like, oh, and she hasn't had a problem with it since.
See? Yeah, well, I mean, think about the horse that got Miles started in agility. If that horse hadn't made that mistake, he might not have run out and you might not have put two and two together that that's what he wanted to do.
Well, and Miles too will, if I'm teaching someone and their horse is spooking at a jump or worried about a jump or a ditch or something, I'll honestly sometimes like I'll try to walk over the jump, and a lot of times the horse is like, oh yeah, get out of here, pound sand, right? So I'll send Miles over it and the horse will be like, oh, and go right over. Like it's incredible.
He must have a very deep horse connection there too. Do you think so?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think because the moment I brought him home, he was at the barn with me. So I actually think he thinks he's part horse. Like, and at the time when I got him, I had my just beloved heart horse, most amazing creature ever. And his younger brother, who is wonderful, but is one of the ones that I sought out instead of like come to
Oh
me.
yeah, yeah. You didn't want to
Yes.
listen.
Love him. But those two and Miles I have so many videos of them like running around in the pasture together, playing together, these two huge
Oh
horses,
my,
this little dog. And it just like, so Miles grew up with two older horse brothers who like always treated him like one of them. So Miles is pretty sure he's part horse.
do you have any of those videos on your Instagram feed?
They should. They're probably way buried. My heart horse has been gone for a couple years now.
Oh, wow.
I'll have to find them and like pop them back up to the top because they just make my heart so happy.
And I assume you rescue your horses too?
Yeah, ish. I mean that gets to be a little bit of a dirty word in the horse world when you talk about rescuing, because like, are you rescuing them from the racetrack? And that's a conversation for a different day. I think some are not rescued and a lot are.
Right.
All the ones that I have owned have been ex-race horses.
Okay.
And some have come from really good connections. Like I'm not knocking the race industry. I
Right.
think we can do a lot better as a whole. And my horses have a lot of trauma that makes me feel like we could definitely do better.
Right. Exactly. Was the pressure, no human or animal really loves a ton of pressure all the time.
Right. Especially when you're so young and you don't even know it. You're not allowed to have a life or have a childhood. You just have to go right to work.
Right. So when is your next competition? And you're in Pennsylvania, right?
I am. Yep. I'm up in Erie.
Where's your next competition in case someone's close by and wants to go watch?
Oh, that would be so fun. Oh my gosh. If anybody's near Erie and knows about Countryside Agility, it's actually Countryside is one of the like, it's so awesome. It's in my backyard because it's really well known in the agility world. Miles, his next is over Labor Day. We have a Labor Day competition. He's competing Saturday and Sunday.
How about in October? Are you doing any?
There's one, let me look. I do actually have something scheduled in October. I just don't know what weekend.
I'd love to meet you in real life and see him in action.
Oh my gosh, that would be so fun. He's signed up, I think, for the 19th and 20th of October.
Okay. Nothing at the end of the month?
I haven't looked that far in advance. We're trying, like, it's crazy busy horse show season right now. So, and we got a late start this year because of the weather, and there was like a horse virus going around. So I'm trying to get all the like my clients' horse shows in. But by the end of October, horse show season should have died down. So then my agility will ramp up. But we'll be in touch because that would be so awesome.
That'd be so cool. All right. Well, Christine, this was so great. I could talk to you for hours.
Oh my gosh, I know. We just do this all day.
I know, because it's my favorite topic ever. I always say to people, whatever you loved so much when you were 5, 6, 7, you must have that in your life now, or you won't be happy. And for me, 5, 6, 7, it was dogs, everything dogs. I memorized every breed. I can't, I have a dog. Oh, I love the way that happened. Oh, that she just went over the couch.
Oh,
all right. That means perfect timing. We just finished on time.
Right.
All right. We'll talk soon. And thanks so much, Christine.
Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Bye.